You ever step onto your own land and realize you're not just fighting for property, you're fighting for the right to exist on your own damn terms? Because let me tell you, the morning I found a laminated HOA notice zip-tied to my gate listing enforcement procedures if I didn't comply with their rules, I actually laughed out loud standing there in my pajamas, coffee steaming in my hand. I mean, I'd survived losing my parents, being orphaned at 17, fighting tooth and nail just to get the deed back from the state's bureaucratic purgatory, only to come home years later and find out I was starring in somebody else's suburban soap opera. Yeah, that happened. Let me back up a sec. The house, when I first came back, didn't look like anything out of a Southern Living magazine. It was rough, falling apart in places, patched with whatever my dad could afford before the accident, and left empty by years of probate red tape. But to me, it was home, weathered, scarred, but real. I poured my city paychecks into that place board by board, every nail like a promise I'm taking it back and no one's ever taking it again. I married Sarah under the old oak out back, the same tree my mom used to hang swing ropes from. Had 2 kids, raised them, wild and honest, taught them how to hunt creeks for crayfish, how to split wood, how to stand their ground when it mattered. This wasn't just land to us, it was sanctuary. For a while, the nearest neighbors were a half-mile off, mostly retirees and deer. Life was simple. Then came the developers, rolling in with their bright vests, their surveys, their Laurel Hills logos stamped on every side of every truck. Suddenly, the woods around us started sprouting houses, all looking identical, plastic shutters, big garages, no soul. The HOA came with them, of course. First, it was just letters and pamphlets, community invitations from guys like Daniel, who looked like they practiced their friendly smile in the mirror every morning, but never quite got it right. I told him politely that we weren't interested. My land was Mackenzie land, always had been. I wasn't part of their little empire. But you know how these folks are, no isn't in their vocabulary unless they're saying it to you. Next, a clipboard lady tried to call my backyard common adjacent space. I told her our pool and our headaches were just fine as they were, thanks, and watched her march off like I'd insulted her ancestors. But then came Karen Stone, their new HOA president. I swear she crossed my property line with those sunglasses and that clipboard like she was invading Poland. Never even said hello, just started lecturing me about visual conformity and how my fence didn't meet their community aesthetic standards. I pointed to the no trespassing sign right next to her, watched her lips go thin like she'd just tasted something sour, and sent her on her way. You'd think that'd be the end of it. Oh, if only. Laurel Hills, exploded houses everywhere, security patrols, neighborhood watch, warning letters for grass growing half an inch too high. Meanwhile, my place stayed just how I liked it. Quiet, messy, real. We built a big deck, hosted birthday parties and barbecues, rented out the field for friends' weddings. Everything paid for everything earned. But the HOA kept circling. Their letters got bolder, thicker, full of legalese. Your compliance is appreciated. Upcoming reviews may affect your inclusion. What inclusion? I didn't sign up for anything. Then came rumors I was squatting on land technically under HOA authority. I owed back dues for services I never used. I started saving every letter, recording every weird encounter, because something in my gut told me this wasn't over. They never knocked after that. They just sent threats, more paperwork, all wrapped up in that smug for the good of the community tone. I came home one afternoon, kids in the back seat, to find that zip-tied compliance notice. Non-standard paint, unauthorized fence, landscaping plans. Who comes up with this stuff? At the bottom, your cooperation will prevent unnecessary enforcement procedures. I poured myself a whiskey and spent the evening going over every document I owned. The land was mine, always had been. The deed, the tax records, the historic surveys, the notarized letter from my grandfather, they all said the same thing. The HOA had no claim, but that didn't stop them from acting like they did. Then the games started. Slow drives past my fence. A guy in an HOA shirt taking zoomed-in photos from my side yard. I walked out with a crowbar and asked if he wanted a closer shot. He took off running. Flyers started showing up on my windshield. Is your neighbor above the rules, with a photo of my house? Noise complaints, possible livestock. My only livestock were 2 labs and a fat cat who could barely move. And then they went after my family. Sarah was followed home from work by a car with their sticker. My kids got grilled at school, teachers hinting I might be a criminal. I installed more cameras, archived everything. The more I pushed back, the nastier they got. Karen started showing up herself, all decked out like she was headed to a charity gala, demanding I join the association and settle this like neighbors. I watched her through the window sipping coffee, thinking, lady, you don't know who you're messing with. The next letter was certified back dues, totaling over $50,000, late fees, penalties, shared environmental stewardship services. The audacity, the notice of intent to lien. They were trying to put a lien on my home. I called my lawyer, Rachel Dunn, tough as nails, sharp as a tack. She flipped through my files, shook her head, and said, they're bluffing. And not even well. But she didn't just want to defend me, she wanted to go on offense. Then the lawsuit landed Laurel Hills HOA v. Evan McKenzie. They accused me of everything: noncompliance, not paying dues, hostile refusal to participate in governance. Rachel looked at the paperwork and said, they're trying to build precedent, create a paper trail. If enough fake documents pile up, courts start to believe it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked the land, flashlight in one hand, shotgun in the other, not out of fear, just needing to touch the ground that was mine. That's when I found it in the attic, buried in my father's old files, a 1953 property map signed by my grandfather, showing the original McKenzie boundary, 1,000 acres, most of which was now Laurel Hills. Rachel's eyes lit up when she saw it. She hired Glenn, a forensic title expert who could sniff out a forged deed at 50 paces. And boy, did he find something. The so-called transfer to the developers after my parents died was fake. The notary had already died when it was signed. The witness never existed. The county office on the paperwork didn't exist back then. And the kicker, Karen Stone, back when she was a junior attorney, had signed off on it herself. Rachel filed a motion for full property rights reversion and damages. The day of the hearing, Rachel walked into court like a shark. She dropped the original deed, the map, and Glenn's report on the judge's desk like she was dealing out royal flushes. Karen sat there, tight smile, navy blazer, acting like she still owned the room. But when Rachel read out the dead notary's name, Karen blanched. The judge saw it too. The ground was shifting. The next day, a retired county clerk named Harold took the stand. He remembered the file, the weird transfer, the order to push it through. The order came from Troy Bennett, a name that landed in the courtroom like a hand grenade. Troy was now a judge himself. Harold produced an email signed by Troy authorizing the transfer under emergency reassignment. Suddenly, this wasn't just a property dispute, it was a full-blown scandal. The judge adjourned, sent the whole mess to the state attorney general. Rachel immediately filed a motion to invalidate every claim Laurel Hills HOA had ever made. The next 48 hours, the local news lost their minds. HOA empire built on stolen land, David versus suburban Goliath. Neighbors who'd never bothered with me before started calling. Then came the preliminary ruling. I was the legal heir, the real owner of the land under all of Laurel Hills. The HOA's claims were frozen, and technically everyone living there was now leasing from me. Karen went silent. Troy Bennett faced a criminal probe. Rachel and I went on the offensive damages for a decade of illegal use, harassment, defamation, devaluation. When the HOA's finances leaked thanks Tiffany, the insider whistleblower, it turned out Karen had been skimming off the top, funding spa trips, steak dinners, paying her brother-in-law for compliance consulting. The development firm collapsed. Karen got charged with fraud, racketeering, the whole kit and caboodle. She lost everything: car, condo, motivational mug business. The court handed me $2.4 million plus rental rights and gave Karen 12 years, no parole for 5. You know what really made it real, though? That day, I stood on my porch, court order in hand, watching the county bulldoze the old HOA office, literally dust and glass everywhere. The local news ran with it. Man who sued a town and won. People wrote in from all over sharing their own HOA nightmares. But for me, justice wasn't about headlines or checks. It was about standing on my land with a cold drink, smelling barbecue, knowing nobody could ever take it again. I set up McKinsey Property Holdings, made lease agreements with decent folks, turned the old HOA lot into a community center for property rights lawyers, landowners, and neighbors coming together to make sure this never happened again. Critics called me petty, a landlord with a vendetta. Maybe. But I was never going to let anyone get away with what Karen tried. 2 years later, the land scars had healed, but nobody had forgotten. I put up a new sign on the edge of what was once Laurel Hills, now Mackenzie Commons. This land is privately owned. Respect it or lose it. No HOA. No nonsense. No exceptions. The first annual Free Ground Festival drew the whole county, kids running wild brisket on the smoker bands, playing the air thick with laughter and justice. And there she was, Karen, in her prison orange, sweeping the sidewalk under the eyes of 2 bored correctional officers. She paused, looked up at the sign. On this land, the law is not HOA, the law is Evan. I raised my lemonade to her, didn't say a word. Didn't have to. Now let me ask you, if you were in my boots, would you have let it go? Or would you have stood your ground? Drop your thoughts below. Where do you draw the line between neighborly peace and standing up for what's right? And hey, if you've got your own HOA horror story, you know I want to hear it. Hit subscribe, and let's make sure no one else gets steamrolled by a crooked HOA ever again.